Good evening to everyone. I welcome you all to ENVIT's Environmental Education Outreach Program, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat. Webinar theme, Know Your Ecosystem, and today's topic is the Lion-Tailed Macaque Conservation Initiatives from Central Western Ghats by Dr. Honnavalli and Kumara. Dr. H.N. Kumara obtained his PhD degree from University of Mysore for his study on an ecological assessment of mammals in non-sanctuary areas of Karnataka. He has extensively studied the distribution of mammals, ecology and behavior of mammals, especially on primates in Annamalai Hills, and adaptation of lion-tailed macaque to the changing habitat in the fragments, and documented the male influx, infanticides, and female transfer in bonnet macaque, and also documented the distribution range of nocturnal slender lorises in entire South India. He has also identified the forest areas for conservation for threatened species in southern states and played a role in strengthening of the protected area network. He studied the elephants in South Bengal, impact of windmills on birds and mammals in Karnataka, animals of burrows in Bharatpur, and macaque and owls of the islands. He has over 110 publication and 4 book chapters for his credits. And after his PhD, he worked as young scientist at NIAS, and he's currently working as principal scientist at Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History. I would welcome sir to take over this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepthi. And this is a great privilege and now for me to share some of our stories and our findings. And thanks for even Bharat. Initially, he invited me to give a talk. And I'm happy to give a talk under Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat in this outreach program. And conservation challenges of lion-tailed macaque in the Western Ghats, and quite a lot of work that we have done on lion-tailed macaque, and also we have reached even different department people and also local stakeholders. And I'm going to share many of all those stories along with our scientific findings in this talk. India is having about 24 primates, among them 10 macaques in India. Out of 10 macaques in India, 2 macaques are found in Western Ghats. One of them is most commonly found bonnet macaque, which is even found in the urban area to forest area, where the lion-tailed macaque is highly confined to the Western Ghats, especially the rainforest area. The closest relative of this one is not found in India, largely in Southeast Asia. The lion-tailed macaque. Why lion-tailed macaque? For example, if we take any of the ecosystems, some of the species play a major role, a key role in the conservation of area or biodiversity, and one of the species will talk on it basically. For example, if we take Western Ghats, what is in Western Ghats? Western Ghats is known for evergreen forest with a good canopy. These canopies, if we have to retain these canopies, then the entire system should be complex. Then only the good canopy will be there. If the way we have a concept of tiger in front for some of the landscape as in apex, like that, if we have a lion-tailed macaque for the Western Ghats apex, so then the entire system, it may be from a forest floor to river system to canopy, will be intact, and it supports to the biodiversity in the of the Western Ghats. Thus, I keep lion-tailed macaque as a key species, as an indicator species, also for the conservation of Western Ghats. Line-tailed macaque is endemic to the rainforests of the Western Ghats, as I have earlier told, and they are very habitat specialist. Why habitat specialist? For example, if we take a bonnet macaque that is found even in Bangalore or even in the entire South India, in every way. But unlike bonnet macaque, this line-tailed macaque is largely confined to evergreen forest. The evergreen forest is a very narrow, patch of the forest, especially in the middle of the Western Ghats, and that's where this species is found. This species is not found in not all possible habitat. Since it is confined to the very specific habitat, it is known as habitat specialist. And also, we call them as a specialized feeder. Their food largely, fruits and some percent of food also from this animal origin food. It is like insects or probably reptiles and other animals also they feed. But however, 60 to 70% of their diet is actually the fruits and seeds. But they feed on only selective fruits, and also of the specific phenophase of the each fruit is very important for the line-tailed macaque. The next factor of the line-tailed macaque is long maturity period. For example, again, if I will be keep comparing the line-tailed macaque with the bonnet macaque, which is most common species. But bonnet macaque, by the age of 3, they mature and they start reproducing. But so that in the lifetime of a bonnet macaque, they reproduce almost double or at least uh, more than line-tailed macaque. That's what I can say. Because line-tailed macaque matures, especially female, at the age of 4.5 to 5, and males mature 6 to 7 years. So that reduces their reproductive period. Because further, they also called as a slow breeder, because the interbirth interval in the line-tailed macaque is much higher, and where bonnet macaque reproduce every year. So that the number of progeny the line-tailed macaque produce per female is very, very small in the number. Thus, the wild population also less in number. In that case, it involves various conservation challenges. Now, here I'm going to address many of all these issues under population monitoring, with fragmentation of its habitat, hunting pressure on them, and population outside protected area, and also how habitat loss is happening, and NTFP collection by people, how that causes competition among the people and the line-tailed macaque, and road and electric lines, and relocation of commensal animals also causes threat to the line-tailed macaque. Here now I take a population monitoring with the appropriate method. For example, if we take a population estimates of earlier period, for example, Green and Minokowski in 1977 reported about 600 macaques in the entire Western Ghats based on their sporadic visit or certain areas that they have explored. Like in the similar way, for a long period, it was assumed that the line-tailed macaques are living in a very small population. Since there was no proper assessment, it was done till 85. Later, there were a series of assessments and population assessments was initiated. And many people have ventured to the Western Ghats and looked at the population. One of the key findings of population is 2003, when Malur et al. They called all the experts together and compiled all the information. Then the number was 3,500. Right? So this is approximately relatively best estimate of the macaques in the entire Western Ghats. The surveys that involved in line-tailed macaque assessment is a trail survey, site records, long-term monitoring of the groups, and extrapolating such information to the overall habitat, and also secondary information, total count method, and grid-based survey have been used by different people in the different timings. Here, this is one of the report that I'm talking about is in Kerala in 1993, the state level assessment was done. This was the first time it was done, and they reported somewhere around 1,216 macaques in 64 groups. This is based on the line survey and conducted simultaneously in all the patches with the volunteers. And this was the kind of a first pioneer work, but unfortunately it has remained as a lost work also, because later again systematic survey has not been done even in Kerala. And in the Kerala, again, one of the another study that we have conducted in Perambikulam landscape, and this is Honnavalli Tiger Reserve, and this is Perambikulam area. Here, what we have done is, as we are aware of the line-tailed macaque home range size of somewhere around 5 square kilometer, we selected the habitat of line-tailed macaque, that is evergreen forest, and we superimposed the 5 square kilometer grid on it, and each grid we considered as the smallest unit for the sampling of line-tailed macaque. With this method, we estimated the population of somewhere around 17 groups of line-tailed macaque with about 303 animals, macaques in the entire Perambikulam area. And then when we have summarized for the entire Honnavalli ecosystem, it was somewhere around 63 groups, and it is one of the probably the largest population. But unfortunately, this population, though we call it as one of the biggest population, but the habitat is severely fragmented in many of these in the many of the forest areas of this Honnavalli ecosystem. Later, for the Karnataka, one assessment was done, and that was by Dr. Karam, and he collected information, as a secondary information from the different people by interviewing the people, and he reported probably even Karnataka itself is having somewhere around 3,500 macaques. But however, he later reported it may not be reliable estimate, probably about 1,000 to 2,000 animals exist. And same time, even Karanth reported about 6 groups for the northernmost population of line-tailed macaque, that is between Sharavati River and Aghanashini River here. And for the same area earlier, Bhatt has also reported about 4 to 5 groups. And later, somewhere in 2002 and 2003, we conducted a survey in between this Aghanashini River and the Sharavati River, and found somewhere around 32 groups of line-tailed macaque, somewhere around 600 to 700 macaques in this area. On the same time, on the other hand, in a Brahmagiri market, the decline of line-tailed macaque was also observed here in the case. And in the recent time, we also conducted a survey in Kudremukh complex following the grid-based survey. Grid-based survey is found to be one of the best method because it gives a much more spatial understanding of the line-tailed macaque, and also that indirectly in turn helps in coming out with the population size for the same. And this is one of the largest scale survey of somewhere around 250 grids were sampled that stretches from the Kudremukh here to Someshwara and Mookambika Wildlife Sanctuary. And this includes the recently added patches of the reserve forest to the same, these protected areas. Earlier, it was reported somewhere around 140 individuals in 18 group. But when we have surveyed that, ultimately it was counted out to be a small in Mukambika 10 and 108, and Kudremukh it was about a 40 group earlier reported, but it has become a half, that is somewhere around 393, and in Someshwara 86 from 192. Though there is decrease in the population size, but still it shows that the population is there and they are contiguous. If we protect, probably, if we give a more effort towards conservation of the macaques in this entire stretch, there is a possibility of that they recovery. And since the habitat is available and habitat contiguity is also there. And this table shows that in some of the area, for example, in Coorg area, there is a severe decline in the population. Though there is a decline, but population shows contiguity and existence of a large population. And some of the area where earlier it was underrepresented, but found more groups. So all three different type of a pattern that was observed in the recent time. And in Tamil Nadu also, when we have surveyed and following the same pattern, Kalakanu Munnathare Tiger Reserve, we reported about 162 animals in 30 groups, and where 266 animals in 8 groups in Theni forest areas. And Honnavalli, as I have told already, somewhere around 63 groups. It's somewhere around about 1,000 individuals in this entire population. And put all the information together of all the surveys, it shows that population probably in the wild may be somewhere around 4,000 animals. And they live in about 47 isolated subpopulations. And thus, even considering the fact that the population decline in certain pockets and fragmentation of its habitat, that species has been kept under endangered. Fragmentation of its habitat is one of the major issues. For example, if you look at this genetic analysis of the population found in the entire Western Ghats, one of the major gap in the entire Western Ghats is Palghat gap. It separates the population found north and south, and they are very distinct genetically. That's what this genetic analysis shows. That means that quite a long back, these populations are separated. And now, of course, quite a lot of habitat loss and more developmental activities, that there is no possibility of connecting these two. Further, these two populations have genetically so isolated, it is enough actually to consider that two subpopulations or subspecies are but however, since morphologically there is no variation, we have decided to keep as a single species, but genetically distinct species. Hunting pressure is one of the major factor, as I have pointed out. Earlier, I have pointed out, for example, if we take Karant et al., what he has reported, especially in the Coorg area, it has almost removed 70 to 80% of the population in Coorg area, and up to south of Charmady, the population decline has been reported. But further north of Charmady, the population exists. And that is one of the serious issues that need to be considered once it comes to the conservation or management of the light-tailed macaque. And population outside protected area, as earlier I have pointed out that yes, we have surveyed this northernmost population, and that is about somewhere 32 groups with 650 monkeys. But what is this habitat? This habitat is completely reserved forest. But forest is contiguous, less amount of a hunting pressure in this area, because people have a belief system that all the arboreal primates, basically Hanuman langurs or bonnet macaque or even light-tailed macaque, are equal to Hanuman. That is the status given by the people. Thus, the hunting pressure in this area is very, very less. However, the area faces a different type of issues. One is the encroachment and habitat conversion for the crop, because somewhere around 15,000 people also exist in the same area where macaques live. So this is another issue that we need to consider, because if the habitat loss is continuous, tomorrow there is a possibility that we are talking about fragmentation in the Honnavalli landscape or other landscape, but it can also happen in the other populations, like now one intact population. When we consider, okay, where are all these large populations are there that we need attention? If we look at that way, that one of the important population that emerges is Sirsi-Honnavara, that is northernmost population of the lion-tailed macaque. Though the Kalakadu Munnantare Tiger Reserve is one of the good track, but population size is somewhere around 500 animals. And Indira Gandhi Wildlife Sanctuary, Honnavalli, Peramikodam landscape is fragmented. And Chenduni and up to Nayar, that particular population is having somewhere around 20 to 25. Silent Valley is having about 14, though the number of groups more in Kudremukh complex, but the population size still less than the Sirsi-Honnavara. Thus, the emphasis for the conservation of Sirsi-Honnavara was given a priority at some time back. But however, since it was in a non-protected area, the strategy that we have used was different. What we have done is, of course, after we arrived this particular number, highlighted the importance of this one, interacted with the forest department to make this area as for the conservation of lion-tailed macaque. However, what happened is forest department came up with the kind of an idea that all the scientific work that was done was of yours. It is not, there was no collaboration with the forest department. Our department has not played any role. Thus, we will reassess the population, then we will see whether what population exists, then jointly we will submit the report. In the same, then the report was, again, it was population was reassessed in 2008, and the document that we have made, and we submitted the major findings of this one to the government to consider this for the further conservation. And this is a report that we have submitted with the forest department. And the story is that ultimately, though they took quite a lot of time, after probably 20, 30 presentations, and but continued our effort, ultimately resulted in Aghanashini Lion-tailed Macaque Conservation Reserve in the Central Western Ghats. In the recent time, this conservation reserve was merged with the Sharavati Wildlife Sanctuary, and this is now considered a Sharavati Valley Lion-tailed Macaque Sanctuary. This area, it is not just only conserves the lion-tailed macaque, it also conserves quite a lot of other species in this area. That is one of the good place for king cobra and myristica, very unique myristica swamps, having many endangered and endemic species, and a few endemic plants, and also few amphibians that was recently described from these swamps. Also, got a kind of a support or a conservation effort in the name of the lion-tailed macaque. That is the reason that I consider this as a key species or a representative species for the evergreen forest. So then we can use this as a trump card, and we can put an effort so then we can conserve the biodiversity. And relocation of commensal animals is another issue that we need to tackle. What is that issue? For example, what happens in most of these areas are the bonnet macaque is considered as the pest because they are highly adaptable and they go for crop riding, they go for market, and they do damage to the even buildings, and they ride in the home because of various these reasons. Often they are captured from the it may be cropland or it may be village, roadside or urban area, and they are relocated to the forest area. If they are relocated to the forest area without screening for their health status or the infections in the animal, there is a possibility that we are not only transferring or relocating, the macaque, but also along with the macaque, relocating of many pathogens are also possible. Here we demonstrate that what could be, what could happen. For example, if the macaques are relocated, then endoparasites we took as an example, and then we looked at the lighted macaque. Here, in the same area, in Sirsi Honnavalli area, we took one of the northernmost groups of lighted macaque, and we monitored that group for almost a year period and collected the fecal samples. In the same area, the bonnet macaques were also released, from the neighboring or close by townships were also identified, and those groups are also monitored for the fecal sample. Later, we have used these fecal samples, and through that we isolated the endoparasites in, and it's low. And similarly, there was a kind of a study which was conducted in the Honnavalli Ghats by CCMB group. We compared our findings with the lighted macaque anomalies and lighted macaque in Sirsi or the Chiksuli, and where it is exists with released bonnet macaque, relocated bonnet macaque. When we look at this one, the similarity of endoparasites is very high with the bonnet macaque of Chiksuli and lighted macaque of Chiksuli than the lighted macaque in the Honnavalli Ghats. That this indicates that the endoparasites of the, that similarity shows that there is a possibility of bonnet macaque, relocated bonnet macaque have probably transferred or infected the lighted macaque exists in those areas. So this is one of the major issues that need to be considered in the management aspect. Probably we are looking at only lighted macaque, but there is also possibility of those relocated animals infecting many other animals existing. It may be langoors or it may be other ungulates and even small carnivores. There may be all possible taxons found in those areas. So this is just a case study. And habitat loss and NTFP collection and competition for resources are the other issues. That here we have also studied the lighted macaque, the resource use in the Chiksuli area. Here, for example, this study was somewhere around 2 years that we have conducted, and using a scan sampling and continuously monitoring these macaques from the morning to evening to the scan sampling, and basically focusing on what do they eat and what part of the plants that they consume. That one. And one of the major food tree for the lighted macaque in this area is Caryota urens. But Caryota urens is not that way major food in many other parts of its habitat. But since the availability of other resources are less, probably that we expect that Caryota, the dependency on Caryota may be more. And also same time, the Garcinia gummi-gutta and a few other species which are NTFP trees also found in more in their diet. In that case, then we suspect that there is a possibility of people using of these things also more, so that there will be an overlap. For example, the upage, the Garcinia gummi-gutta, and these highly extracted TFP in the same region. And there is somewhere around 15 NTFPs collected from the Sirsi Honnavalli landscape. That livelihood of the people, almost somewhere around 14 to 15% depends on the NTFP collection. But among them, one of the major contribution is Garcinia gummi-gutta. If that is the case, then understanding of Garcinia gummi-gutta is very important. Garcinia gummi-gutta is basically fruit, that is produced in the rainy season. In the rainy season of somewhere around 6 months, it is also important, food for the lion-tailed macaque. Once in the rainy season, where people harvest this Garcinia gummi-gutta, and they immediately dry it. But the way they dry, it is like a very crude oven system. It's that there will be a big structure, and it is with a stone structure, and firewood logs are put in, and above that one on a plate, these fruits are dumped, and slowly it is dry. So it consumes, because of this one, they even cut a lot of firewood in the wet season, and they use that one for drying of these fruits. Ultimately, these fruits gets converted into very dry for fruits, and this is then stored. And this is what very important in some of the pharmaceutical companies, especially many of our antacids are produced from the extract of these fruits. So then it is sold to the pharmaceutical companies. And so thus it play a major role as a economic source for the local people. And when we look at this one now, the the lion-tailed macaque basically requires a mesocarp of the Garcinia gummi-gutta, where rind and seeds are used by the people. And another important fruits again is Myristica malabarica and Myristica dactyloides, that eril is used by people, and also that same is also a major food of lion-tailed macaque. Unfortunately, the Myristica malabarica and dactyloides, we didn't see them feeding by macaque. The reason for that is basically the fruits of the Myristica, both of them, are harvested much earlier, and lion-tailed macaque uses this one much later stage. That phenophase is not at all available in the forest. Thus, they were basically didn't get the opportunity to feed on these fruits. So that there is a competition in a various way of a resource used by the people and also macaques. Yeah. And as I have pointed out, due to the process of Garcinia gummi-gutta, the harvesting of or cutting of a wood is also very high, and also have encroachment and the conversion of the forest into agricultural landscape ultimately has resulted in gradual decline in the lion-tailed macaque habitat, that is evergreen forest. This is what this indicates. But on the other hand, there is increase in the degraded habitat and also plantations. So that indicates that this harvesting and cutting of a wood and encroachment is gradually affecting already the evergreen forest, and eventually, if we don't take a step, that it becomes a probably fragmented landscape. Another issue, as the 15,000 people are there in the in the same region, where the line-tailed macaque exists. Over the period, what is happening is that one of the large families becoming many nuclear families, when they are starting up their own house and everything, there are two things, that is access, that is a road network is developed, and also the power lines are also given to those houses. This is gradually increasing the road network and also power lines throughout the in the habitat of the line-tailed macaque. That is resulting in the death of the electrocution of line-tailed macaque, that they are dying. So this also requires a major attention to address save the line-tailed macaque. So to address this issue, what we have done is, we have mapped the electric line in the entire region, and after mapping, then we submitted this report to the department. So when we looked at all these findings, basically, just all the facts that we have looked at is basically this population of line-tailed macaque is one of the largest population, but it is in reserve forest with a high human density. And there was also kind of a proposal for eight mini hydel projects in the same area. And people dependency on leaf litter is very high, and agriculture practice is very high. Due to that, people have a habit of encroaching the evergreen forest or the forest area there. And also there is an overlap in the resource used by people and also line-tailed macaque. And habitat loss due to firewood collection for drying of Garcinia gummi-gutta, and due to expansion of more number of houses, that has increased the road network and electric network in the landscape. So few conservation management initiatives were taken. As earlier I have told already, that we have gotten notified this area as a protected area and it has become a sanctuary, but it didn't address all the issues. There are many other issues that we have addressed slowly. One of the issues that was promoted was, instead of using a very conventional drain system, if people are shifted to the oven system, then the efficiency of fuel use can increase. So then consumption of the firewood can be decreased. So that it was promoted, it is promoted, and many people have started using the oven system. At a time, the large quantity of the fruits can be dried in this one with less amount of fuel food. This is one of the initiation taken to reduce the firewood use in the landscape. Then, same time, the sustainable harvesting of NTFP was also initiated. For example, in many of these ranges, NTFP, harvesting of an NTFP is basically auctioned by the forest department to the person who takes he pays nominal money to the department, and he will have a right to collect the NTFP from the harvesters, and then he can go for selling. Then the auctioning was stopped, and the harvesting and selling of or marketing of these NTFPs was initiated through VFCs, so that local people also get a benefit, and also there will be a kind of a committee to control over how much quantity they have to harvest, at what phenophase that they have to harvest, and also then addressing the conservation issues becomes easier. Keeping this one in the mind, that the harvesting and marketing was moderated through the BFCs. Another major issue already over the period, that habitat has been already over exploited and got converted into much more barren area. Thus, though there are many nurseries in this landscape, and but many of these nurseries had exotic trees or fast-growing plants that they use for restoring these forest areas. And through this particular study of making them understanding of the requirement of the people and also requirement of the lion-tailed macaque, the list of plant species were prepared that is required by the both macaques and the humans, and asked the department to convert all the nurseries for only those specified plant species. And accordingly, at least two of the nurseries were converted for the these native fruit-bearing trees which are useful for the both, and started using for that one for the restoring the degraded forest in the landscape. And also, as I have earlier pointed out, that for power supply that to all the houses in the entire landscape, that the network of the power line was increased. But that we cannot stop giving the power supply to the people. People require the power supply. But then how to address this issue? Through insulating the wire of the power line, that we can avoid animals getting into or get electrocuted. Thus, we conduct, after understanding of all these concepts, then we convince the department, and the report of the entire thing and the mapping and the population importance was submitted to the department. Through department, that we contacted the power corporation, and after contacting the power corporation, that some extent they have agreed, and partially some of the areas with the huge expenditure got insulated. But still, that process is on. Still, it requires little more of effort to complete the insulation in the entire habitat range of the lion-tailed macaque. Fortunately, we were able to at least achieve 50% of the area to be insulated, power lines insulated. And to achieve all these goals, conserving and all these, thing, that many people have, contributed, and I thank many of all the people, and also I thank for the organization, our organizers giving this opportunity to share our, findings and conservation story. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for very insightful information on lion-tailed macaques and its conservation strategies. I would like to ask the participants to pose any questions or queries regarding the webinar. Are there any
I don't
questions?
think there will be any questions, probably.
Yes, sir. I don't think so. Okay, sir. Then if that's the case, then we'll wrap up the webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumara, sir. It was a very insightful webinar, and we would look forward to having more of such webinars in the future.
Thank you, Deepti. Thanks for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.